If you want Chris Olave to have a 1,000-yard season, I need you at home to do one thing for me, like today's video. I'm telling you right now, if we get 500 likes, there is no way in hell that number 12 doesn't have another 1,000-yard season. So hit the thumbs up icon and like this video. Why are we talking about Chris Olave? Because the topic of today's show, wide receiver trade rumors. I saw some juicy stuff on Bleacher Report, so I wanted to hop on the mic, share my thoughts, give you my take. So without further ado, let's break it on down here on Saints Now by Chat Sports. Let's talk about it. Wide receiver trade rumors. We're going to start off first by talking about a player the Saints could potentially send away, and then we're going to have a conversation about a player the Saints could bring in. I want to start off first by saying we're talking Brandin Cooks. I don't necessarily want to do it, but I wanted to give you my take. Here's what Bleacher Report had to say. In his 12th year, Brandin Cooks would be a better fit on a playoff-contending squad rather than a team in its early stages of a rebuild with a starting quarterback who has an uncertain short-term future. Now, there is an argument to be made that the New Orleans Saints could potentially move off of Brandin Cooks because you brought in some serious speed on the waiver wire. Trey Palmer, Louisiana native, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, has swapped out the pewter and red for some black and gold, and now we can take an updated look at the wide receiver room. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Brandin Cooks needs to get out of New Orleans. I actually was really excited when the New Orleans Saints brought him back in free agency. But you could potentially make an argument that you could swap out Brandin Cooks, put in Trey Palmer, have that speedy deep threat next to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, who are speedy deep threats and just legit great wide receivers, in my opinion. They have serious speed, they have serious talent, and I think this is a severely underrated squad. Let me make this explicitly clear here. I do not want to send away Brandin Cooks, especially if it's for pennies on the dollar. I would rather keep him around. And I'm going to explain my case here in just a little bit, but I first want to take a look at the production that this player has had over the past few seasons. Obviously, in the last 4 years, the numbers have taken a dip from what we saw early in his career. But if you want to talk about accolades, this guy's got a lot of them. 6 separate 1,000-yard seasons. He's tied for 5th most in the NFL since 2014. An average depth of target of 12.3 yards, 0 drops last season. He had the 5th most receiving touchdowns of 40 more yards since 2014 and 9,000 receiving yards since 2015. That is 9th among all wide receivers. I do believe Brandin Cooks has a role on this offense. I still think he can be an explosive playmaker. Again, he's not the player he used to be, but I think that he can still provide some pop and provide a lot of good to this offense, especially being a veteran and a severely young and inexperienced wide receiving core. We're going to talk about this in great detail. Also, what could potentially be brought back for Brandin Cooks and who's a suitor? We're going to talk about it in a moment. But first, got to tell you about today's presenting sponsor, and that is PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the whole wide world. This episode of Saints Now by Chat Sports brought to you by PrizePicks. Football is back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm literally watching college football on the TV right behind this camera because I am a fanatic, and if you are too, you gotta download the PrizePicks app. And if you're a little bit of a degenerate like I am, and you like testing your ball knowledge, hey, PrizePicks is a great place to do that. You could download the PrizePicks app, use code CLNS, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And if you're like, Trizzy, I need a little inspiration here. Well, look no further than 2 potential future Saints legends, Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier. I went ahead and laid down these projections for these players. College football week 1, it is here. I'm so excited. 2 really exciting matchups on Saturday. And you guys can fade these picks. You can tail these picks. I don't care what you do. Just go make some money with PrizePicks. It's also the best way to get in on the action in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Join millions of users and sign up today. Download the PrizePicks app and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to PrizePicks. Run your game. All of that information is in the comments and description of this video. Now, fair question to ask, why would we keep Brandin Cooks? Well, I do believe that he provides a really nice veteran presence in a young wide receiver group, and I believe that he can still make some big plays. I'm not asking him to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I'm not even asking him to be an 800-yard receiver. To be honest, 400 yards in this room, being a guy that has to share, the ball with Olave, Kamara, Shaheed, Tip, now Trey Palmer, Devon Bailey, Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, those guys are going to turn from the PUP list at some point. So when it comes to Brandin Cooks and keeping him, I do think it would make some sense. But fair question, why would we trade Brandin Cooks? Well, the Saints have a lot of similar players to Cooks. Remember that wide receiver group we just showed you? A lot of speed. There is a ton of speed. If there's one thing that this New Orleans Saints offense is going to be, it's going to be fast. And I'm really, really eager to see how Kellen Moore schemes up these plays to be beneficial to not just the wide receivers, but to the young passers in Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. Obviously, Rattler is the QB1. Shuck, in my opinion, will start some games. They're going to need to rely on the high-level wide receivers that you have in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, but also lean on that veteran presence in Brandin Cooks. Again, this is a very, very fast offense. You have a lot of speed on this group, not to mention the 4.33 speed that Brandin Cooks can provide. I think that this is an offense that is going to be predicated on separation and just burning them and getting past the DBs and using your legs to win. I really think that Kellen Moore can utilize those skills and utilize the roster to benefit the offense, and that is something that's been a strength throughout his career. Now, what does a trade look like? Here's what Bleacher Report suggested. A 5th-round pick for Brandin Cooks. I don't know. Might be worth it. Because, remember, the Saints do have a lot of players similar to Brandin Cooks, a lot of speed, a lot of deep threats, but they also could recoup some of that draft capital. You've sent away some in that Devon Bailey trade. You sent away more when you traded for Raheem Richards. So when it comes to New Orleans, maybe bringing in some draft capital in 2026 when you're already down a 4th and a 7th-round pick could be beneficial, especially if you take some 5th-round picks, try to trade back into the 4th, might be useful. Here's more from Bleacher Report on Brandin Cooks. The Steelers, here's why they're a fit. It should be one of the strongest suitors for Cooks, who would be the team's 2nd biggest wideout behind DK Metcalf. Calvin Austin III made strides as a big play receiver last season, but QB Aaron Rodgers can target Cooks as his reliable chain mover in the aerial attack. So I'll ask you the question, would you do this trade, considering the Steelers could use him? Maybe you could get some good draft capital in return. He was brought in free agency. Might be worth sending him away. This guy's been traded so many damn times. Do we want to trade him again? I don't know. Personally, I'm going to not trade him, but I want to hear you because you guys deserve to sound off. Really quick, I will also remind you to join the Golden Gang. Subscribe to Saints Now by Chat Sports. You cannot call yourself a real Saints fan until you join our squad here. I pride myself in bleeding black and gold. And if you're in the exact same boat that I am, you can't call yourself a real Saints fan until you lock yourself in. Because you ain't subscribed if you ain't alive. So join our family, the Golden Gang, our awesome group of subscribers, almost 50,000 strong. I hope to see you subscribe today. And as promised, we talked about trading a player away. Let's talk about bringing one in. Romeo Doubs could be the next player that the Packers send away. Looks like they're in the market of making some trades. Micah Parsons headed up to Green Bay. Maybe Romeo Doubs could be headed out. 6'2", 204 pounds. He's only 25 years old. He's in the last year of his rookie contract, and he has become the odd man out, especially after the Packers added Matthew Golden. They have Dontavian Wicks. They have some wide receiver depth now. And in 2024, fairly productive. 46 catches, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 13 yards per grab. Maybe a change of scenery could be beneficial for the Packers wide receiver. Bleacher Report talking about this idea, not specifically for the Saints, but just in general. The Packers can go 4 deep at wideout with Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, and Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson will begin the season on the PUP list. Now, General Manager Brian Gutekunst, whatever. The Packers GM believes 26-year-old Romeo Doubs will be chomping at the bit to return after 4 weeks. Now, with Romeo Doubs, he has been a fairly productive player over season. 3 seasons with the Green Bay Packers. Last year, 46 catches, 601 yards. But in 2023, 59 catches, 8 touchdowns, almost 700 yards. And you can see the production in 2022. Over 10 yards per grab every year. I do think that could be beneficial to bring in. And in my personal opinion, you can just never have too many wide receivers. Here's more about the Romeo Doubs trade. When Watson is back on the field, Doubs, who according to SI.com, was frustrated with his role last season, could be expendable for the right compensation. The 25-year-old has a manageable $3.6 million cap hit in the final term of his rookie contract. Look, there is no such thing as too much wide receiver depth. I'm old enough to remember a few years ago when wide receiver 1 was Marquez Callaway. I'm old enough to remember last year when at one point in time, wide receiver 2 was Mason Tipton. We didn't really have a wide receiver 1 available. It was Alvin Kamara. I mean, he led the team in receiving yards last year. That's embarrassing. You have to always look for ways to improve. I'm not saying you trade away the future, but if there are players that are available for low cost and it's a low risk, high reward situation, why would you not want to dive in and indulge on that? Don't make stupid trades. I know the other day I said that Mickey Loomis needs to stop making trades, but I want him to stop making trades and overpaying. I want him to go about making smart decisions and bring in proven playmakers that can help this roster because, quite frankly, the young quarterbacks in Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck are going to need as much help as they can possibly get. If wide receivers in injuries start having another crazy year, then you are going to see significant drop-off in the quarterback play. Some other wide receivers to potentially keep an eye on. Jacoby Myers, he could be traded from the Las Vegas Raiders. Juwan Jennings requested a trade. San Francisco 49ers. I really, really like him. A very clutch player. Not a ton of production, but has been very, very good. Last year, almost 1,000 yards, though. Alec Pierce with the Indianapolis Colts. Former Cincinnati Bearcat, if I remember correctly. And Tyreek Hill, the speed demon in Miami. Feels like there's trouble in paradise down in South Beach. If you wanted more speed, hey, why don't you just put Rashid Shaheed, Tyreek Hill, and Chris Olave on the field and just make them run downfield and see who can get to the end zone quickest. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We had an awesome time talking about some wide receiver trade rumors. My name is Trizzy Trace Girouard. Be sure to subscribe, and y'all stay golden. We will see you next time, but before we sign off, I want to ask you a quick question. Name a wide receiver you want the Saints to trade for. Get crazy with it. Have some fun. I don't care. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, I don't care. Have some fun with it. And if you want to go above and beyond and show you no ball, let me know the trade compensation. As I said, y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.